You are listening to the J-Cut Podcast. My name is Mike Shantai, and on this podcast, I speak with creative people about their careers, their passions, and their lives. I just want to take a quick moment right now to remind anyone who's listening or watching to please hit the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, or follow or subscribe on your favorite audio podcasting platform. Really helps boost the algorithm and helps us create a more sustainable channel where I can continue to create more content and bring it out weekly, talk to new people. It really helps if you do that. If you would do that for me, it would really mean a lot. On today's episode, I'm sitting down with my good friend, Andy Ingram. Andy is an actor, but kind of consider him more of a performer. I met him when I was doing the Legend of Zelda short film that's available on my YouTube channel. He was the stunt coordinator, choreographer, sort of. He's a stunt consultant on top of acting in multiple commercials, films, television series. He did Evil Dead, the musical, a touring show for a good long run, and is heavily involved in theater production, film production, stunts, choreography, and we kind of just talked about what it's like being an actor in today's market, how it's changed since what it was like back in the day. We also got into a really interesting conversation about intimacy coaches and how he believes that originated from stage combat, and now has become a bit more of a job in mainstream media and film, for things like nudity scenes and sex scenes, but how it originated from stage combat and how he's such a huge proponent of it. If you were an actor or a performer, Andy has a wealth of knowledge. If you have not yet cut the cord, you have definitely seen him in commercials. He's done tons of stuff across the whole North American market, and he's got a ton of experience in so many different aspects of performing and acting, and it was just an absolutely fascinating conversation when I got to sit down and talk with him. So, without any further ado, let's just let him take it away. This is the J-Cut Podcast with Andy Ingram. Let's just jump into it, because now sure. I'm rolling.
Oh, you're rolling, right?
So, you are an actor.
Yes, my name is Andy Ingram, and I'm an actor, and I'm transitioning to becoming a union actor.
Union actor.
Yeah, I started out mostly doing theater, music theater. That was kind of, I think most everybody probably starts out doing that. But in the last couple of years, since 2016, I've kind of hit my stride being in commercials. It's a particular kind of gig, and you have to bring something to the table to get that kind of work. But I'm happy that I've been getting lots of it, and hopefully some of your viewers and listeners maybe have seen some of my work.
I was going to say that odds are, if anyone who's channel surfed at any point has probably seen you, like in North America.
Yeah, I think so.
Because you do Canada market and US market.
Well, yeah. So a lot of times when you start out doing this kind of work, you start out as a non-union actor, which means you go for kind of all types of commercials that might audition or shoot in Canada. But a lot of times it'll be a session fee and then a buyout, but it'll be like just an all-encompassing North America, just all TV, all internet, all everything. And when you're starting out, that's kind of a fun project to get. So one of the first contracts I got was something for Planet Fitness. That was one of the first kind of big gigs that I got that would have I would have been on TV in a lot of people's homes, because it was full North American buyout.
Yeah.
So it was all it would have been like on channels like History Channel and A&E. So I had a lot of American people who saw me and would message me. It was really fun spot. It was I should say I have some training in stage combat and stunt work.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get into that.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, or at least one of the things I think I do quite well is like take a punch and kind of just like bring a little sympathy to the character. And Dan Levinson, the guy who would have taught me all my stage combat, he's like my mentor. He always said he really enjoyed seeing me, kind of get my ass beaten. Yeah. So when I started out, I was doing a lot of gigs where I was kind of the butt of the joke.
Yeah.
And yeah, this first commercial was really fun. Planet Fitness, their brand is like a gym where there's no judgment. If you make noise when you're lifting weights, they'll tell you to leave because like that's even judgment. Like, you don't want to judge the weights. You don't want to judge anything.
Okay.
So anyways, this whole spot, so I'm this guy who sees this little old lady and she's trying to cross the street. So I try and help her.
I think I saw this. I think I might have shared it with you. Yeah. Or it might have been on a website or in one of your reels so that you sent me one.
It's super quick, but I look at her. I'm like, hey, can I help you? And she thinks I'm trying to like mug her. So she maces me.
Nice.
And it was really funny. And yeah, the whole spot is like Planet Fitness is a place where there's no judgment. So the little old lady can't judge me. So I go there for a workout.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy that so many American market commercials are actually just shot in Toronto. Like they're never seen in Toronto or in Canada, like on broadcast. Like if you go out of your way to look it up online, you'll find it. But like my sister did a commercial here, all shot in Toronto for some like bank based out of Texas. And it was like a project being seen. And it was part of their marketing in Texas only. And it's like, why? Are we that cheap up here?
I think, unfortunately, we are. Yeah. Now, I'm not the authority on this, so no one come writing to me. But on my last gig I did last year, I shot in Vancouver on a travel company. Now, unfortunately, the spot never made it to air, and ultimately, they decided not to run it. So then you never get to see your work. That being said, the day I was shooting, I got to work with the directors, pretty close with them. And I was just playing the host. Yep. So, when you're doing like a commercial shoot where there's like a bunch of actors, you don't really develop a rapport with the director because it's pretty hands off. Mm-hmm. But this was like, I was just the host. So the directors and me were hanging out quite a bit. And we actually got to kind of like hang out like in the hot tub. We were at like a millionaire's mansion.
Yeah, you told me about that. Yeah.
And they told me that they only shoot up in Canada when the company they're working for doesn't want to pay a lot for the acting. So
yeah,
we're
cheap.
Yeah, that's what we're known for, I guess. Still. I worked last summer with a girl. She's Canadian, but she took a little time in the UK. And she's represented by my agency, and we were just hanging out on set. And I don't know if this is true or not, but she told me that like she shot one commercial when she was in the UK, and the buyout was like $20,000.
Gargantuan.
It was ridiculous. Now there are sometimes
that sounds like a perpetuity buyout, like
and
for forever.
But you see that happens here.
Yeah.
Like one of the very first gigs I ever did was a perpetuity buyout for about $1,000.
That's insane.
That's horrible, but it's. It's what you got to do.
Well, there can't be like a non-compete that comes with that too. Like they can't.
No, and it doesn't. But the other side of the non-compete or like the perpetuity is that in the non-union world, or at least some of the stuff that I've shot, it's called evergreen, which means once it goes online, as long as they don't take it off, they never have to pay for it again. Mm-hmm. So even though one of the companies that's actually currently on TV right now, even though they've only paid for 1 year of online, they're just going to leave it up forever.
Yeah.
And
like, well, because I think it's like they can leave the spot up as it was, but after the buyout ends, they probably can't modify it or
and they can't repost it.
Yeah. That's because I mean, that's the world we live in now where once it's online, it's forever. Like the internet does not forget shit.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too. So many actors will like get stuff from set and post it, and they just don't realize like
that can be a big no-no.
Huge no-no. And it also like it really kind of it throws a wrench into the whole process of especially whatever the film company has been doing or whatever the advertising agency what they've been trying to create with it. I think a lot of actors the temptation of getting your work out is so great.
And not only that, I mean it's exciting too because you're like, look at this cool stuff I'm doing.
Totally.
But you might not want to share it too early, at least.
When I was in Vancouver, I got like a mythical one take on a boat in an ocean with like steady cams and like a crew of 100 people. And I would love to show that footage to people, but I'm never going to be able to.
That's such a bummer.
I know.
Like, and that's just because they pulled the spot, right?
Yeah. And it has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with the client eventually just decides this isn't the way I want to go. So I guess what they do is, they consider it like a purchased asset and assets that never are released. So I guess they view it as it's not really a loss. They still own it and they have the material, but I doubt they'd ever go into it.
Yeah. If they decide to use it later on, they probably would work out some sort of buyout again.
Exactly.
And then they could use it. But I mean, like my experience in the commercial world is it's not uncommon for people to pull a spot even if they've spent like $100,000 on it. Like,
really?
I mean, because like when you think of this is the big companies doing that, but $100,000 to a company like Coca-Cola or Nike is nothing. Like it's
especially when advertising is so lucrative and so powerful.
Like, when they make that in an hour, like, so, you know, what it's just like, well, whatever, we'll pull it. Like, we spent the money, but who cares? It's like,
one of the things I shot a couple years ago was for a financial institution, and it was amazing. It lived online, and it even, you know, it didn't make it to TV. It was never TV, but it got online, and like it totally got on social media everywhere. And then it had to be pulled down because public hated it.
Yeah.
So that's another thing too. We live kind of in this world where everybody has a voice and an opinion.
Kind of like the men's Gillette commercial. It didn't get pulled, but that was like, there was a huge fucking uproar about that. Yeah. Like,
I don't understand why people pulled it. It was, the concept was that I was just playing like part of a couple.
Yeah.
And we were an acronym, which was kind of like, we were dimwads.
Yeah.
But it was an acronym of like, you know, dual income, married, and yada, yada, yada. And then we were going to turn into something. But yeah, like that actually offended people. People were like, I don't really think it's okay to call them dimwads. It's like, I've never even heard someone use that term.
No.
Like, you know what I mean? But
I've heard dickwad.
Exactly.
People are too sensitive. Like, it's,
well, that's another thing too, right?
There's such a weird, like, I mean, almost anything you put out now is open to offending somebody. And I mean, like, to me, it's just not worth being offended over most stuff, unless you're like straight up attacking a group of people, like in a way that's derogatory, or like, you know, otherwise just like fucking grow up.
It's ridiculous.
Especially people who get offended on behalf of other people.
Well, that's like professional. Yeah. Or like, I don't even know what you'd call them, but people who are like professionally offended.
Yeah.
Like, any, like that, you mentioned that Gillette ad, right?
Yeah.
The Gillette ad came out, and it was like, it created quite a large response.
Which I'm kind of assuming that's what Gillette wanted.
Totally. They didn't, I don't think they really cared about people learning the message as so much as they wanted the water cooler talk.
It's free advertising. It's free additional advertising.
Yeah. And it's just, I think though, people are professionally offended nowadays to get maybe eyes on their own stuff. So
maybe,
I remember we talked about it a lot. I took some time away from acting to do a post-grad certificate in communications and public relations.
Yeah, which you just wrapped up.
I did. Like, I just wrapped it up
last month or something.
Yeah. I'm still finishing up my internship at a gallery, but it's all happening now. But we talked about the Gillette ad, and it was amazing, or it was fascinating to watch that the week after that ad landed, there was what seemed like a lot of online talk about it. But then when you'd actually like read the article, you'd realize like that the reporters who were, you know, saying like Twitter is outraged, the profiles they were using as their source material was like bots. They only have five followers or whatever. So I do think there are some people who kind of
manufactured outrage,
sensationalist writers. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, it whatever gets people clicking on the article, right? So,
well, and that's the whole thing we learned like in my that's the whole thing I did in college. It's like people want eyes on their stuff. So whether or not you're a nonprofit, an actor, a musician, a director, it doesn't matter. A mom and pop shop that makes horse snacks.
Well, I think it's the same thing too when you like look at YouTubers and stuff, right? Anything that kind of goes viral or is a big trending topic, people try to capitalize on it. You get these like, somebody reacts to this video, and then everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon to generate their own profile, basically.
Well, I don't know. I've not seen the movie, so I can't really tell you if I liked it or not. I don't know if you've seen it. Have you seen the movie Bird Box?
Yes.
Okay, so it's that Netflix thing. Yep. It came out. It was big. Everybody had seen it like over the weekend. A lot of people were writing about it, but then a lot of people kind of thought the plot was a little like, and there's definitely a lot of holes you can find in it. And now, again, I have not seen it, so I just know what people think about it. But they came up with the Bird Box challenge pretty fast.
Yeah, that was quick.
That was almost manufactured by the people who put the movie out.
Yeah, possibly.
And that I could see that being like someone's motivation. It's going to be more of an experience.
On a book too, right? So it's not like the it would have had to have like originated from the idea of the book. Like, but yeah, I could totally see that being like a bit of a manufactured, like someone at Netflix in their marketing department came up with it or something. Yeah. Although then they also said like, stop doing this because people start hurting themselves and shit. So speaking of adaptations though, you did Evil Dead.
I did.
And
I did.
I wanted to talk about a little
bit.
Yeah. Because I'm a big fan of Evil Dead, all iterations of it so far. And you did the musical, this like stage play. So what was I can't remember what capacity.
Evil Dead, it's a musical written by Christopher Bond.
Yeah.
George Reinblatt is kind of the main author on it, and a couple other people from Queen's University. Mm-hmm. They the show itself has had a couple different iterations, but essentially, for people who don't know what it is, it's the very nuts and bolts story of Evil Dead 1 and 2, kind of with like Act 1 being most of Evil Dead movie. 1, and then kind of culminating. It's kind of like they mash up together, and then the
it's
second
like that in
act.
The movie too, because Evil Dead 2, the first like 20 minutes of it is just a retelling of the first one.
Yeah. So Starvox is the company that mostly produces them. There's a lot of other companies that will buy the rights to it and do it. I think there's even a company in Korea right now that's kind of been doing it for a little while. That's cool. It is pretty cool because they do like a big dance number and like they really go for it.
Go full K-pop on it.
Well, and it is kind of crazy to see that, right? And I definitely love seeing like universities tackle the material because university theater programs, there's always like, maybe 30 students, and Evil Dead has nine roles.
Yeah.
And you can do it with 8 people. Like I've even done it with 7 people. So when you see like 30 zombies on stage, all doing Thriller or something like it is quite good. But yeah, anyway, so Evil Dead, I toured with them in 2015. And I started out as the swing and the fake Shemp. So Sam Raimi created the term fake Shemp. He was a huge Three Stooges fan. And when they were shooting the original Evil Dead movie, it's an indie movie, right? Yeah. And you don't always have your actors here and there. So,
or your actors are also your crew. Because
you got it.
Because you don't. Movie and nobody has any money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it was a passion project, right? Yeah. So a couple of the weekends that they would go up and shoot, they wouldn't have the people they needed. And maybe they needed like someone's hand or someone's leg or like a zombie version of maybe Linda, but it's clearly not the actress because they're shooting the 6 months after they had her.
Yeah.
So Shemp, or fake Shemp, was the term he kind of coined for the guy who does all the body parts, all the odds and ends. So that's what I played. So every night that we were full strength, I would do the trees. I would be the conductor that would pop up halfway through, and we had like a lot of little moments where like, it's clearly you're watching a show. I did a bunch. I was the hand for a little while. So Ash loses his hand and it gets possessed. So I'm that for a while.
How'd you do that?
It's a lot of just like stage magic, but it's not as magical as you might think. It's a lot of hand positions and a glove and a prosthetic that you use. So it's a lot of physical acting, but my background in stage combat really made it useful and really made me valuable, I think, to the production because I was able to do all that stuff. And then one of the fun parts of the evening was I would get to play Headless Linda. So Linda gets her head cut off at one point, and in the original Evil Dead, there's one shot where it's so clear it's a man playing Linda that they kind of wanted to recreate that moment. So the actual Linda, through some stage magic, ends up on a different part of the stage, but I would come out dressed as her, like from the bottom down, with this headless mascot like outfit headless, right? Thing. Yeah. And then I would be possessed and I would chase Ash around with a chainsaw, and it was quite crazy.
Didn't you step up to be Ash at one point?
So when I was on tour, I was the male swing as well. Yeah. So the first tour I would cover Ed, which is the quiet professor's assistant, who's the fiance to Annie. I'd cover Scotty, who's Ash's best friend, and good old reliable Jake, which is the country bumpkin who finds Annie and Ed in the woods and takes them to the cabin. So we did a tour. We ended in Mesa, Arizona. It was beautiful. And we finished our tour in 2015, and then we kind of went on hiatus for a little bit. And in 2016, in February, we brought it back to the Randolph stage, which is kind of their home theater. It's the one place in the city where they can do something called the blood curtain.
Okay.
Which is they have a special rig hanging, kind of like sprinkler system that we flood blood through, well, our blood.
Yeah.
And so Randolph really loves it when Evil Dead's there, and I think Toronto really likes going there. So we were there, but
dude, it was advertised all over the place.
Yeah.
Like I remember the signage like all over the city.
And that's also like
a
a really cool thing to be riding the subway and, you see the poster and stuff like that. But we lost our Ed in between, like over the hiatus. He got a gig in Shanghai with Disney.
Okay.
Musical theater gig. Yeah. Good for him. He's still over there doing his thing. And then I updated to his position, and one of his responsibilities, so whoever plays Ed has to also understudy Ash.
Mm-hmm.
So for this kind of period, I was understudying every single male role in the show, which is pretty crazy. And that's why I'm the way I am. But I got a chance to do Ed. I got a whole weekend of sold out shows, and it was awesome. As Ash. Sorry, as Ash. Yeah. So it was terrifying, but it was also amazing. I was very lucky too. My family came to see the 11 o'clock performance of it, and it was awesome.
Well, like, I mean, as a huge fan of Evil Dead, like all through Army of Darkness, the 2013 reboot, and the Ash versus Evil Dead. Did you watch Ash versus Evil Dead?
Yeah. So we definitely as a crew we did a lot of watching the shows, and like a lot of when you're on tour you check in with it again, because at the end of the day, as artists, we all wanted to bring ourselves to the characters, but we also wanted to give the fans what they want.
Yeah.
Some of our best lines are pulled right from Army of Darkness. And if you're playing Ash and you go slow enough through the boomstick speech, you can usually get a couple of dudes who are drunk enough to stand up and scream it with you. Yeah. And that's a pretty cool feeling.
This is my
boomstick. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, like I mean, especially if you're a fan of that media, to be able to play the character, not just like in little local theater, like it was a big production. Like,
yeah, well, it was it's definitely like the original one. So whenever Starbox is doing it, that's like the main cast, which is great. And it's really cool. Like Bruce Campbell totally signed off on it, and he loves it. And it would have been nice to run into him on one of the tours that I was on, but he was off doing Ash versus Evil Dead, so he had his own.
Did he ever pop out to see them at any point?
Yeah, in 2006, I think.
Like when it first kind of started, or
they did an off-Broadway run.
Yeah,
there was a brief period where Evil Dead, I believe, was shown at Just for Laughs Festival. So it was kind of a different show. There wasn't as much dancing, and wasn't as much stage business like with the stage combat. But in 2013, the production team kind of updated, and everybody decided to make the whole musical, I think, a little bit more on par with what you'd see if you were off Broadway. Yeah. So, like Stacey Morosky's the choreographer, and her dances are very athletic and very dynamic and energetic. And Kevin Robinson is the fight director, and his fight is, you have to be very physically able to do his fights. And then the other mix is that we perform it to music, and we don't have a band. So that means you have to perform with the CD. So you have to...
Has to be on time
every night perfectly. It would be great to have a live orchestra play it.
Could have like improvised with you and stuff.
Yeah. But no, that's...
The budget.
Not how it works. Yeah. Well, it's the realities of entertainment and this business.
Too. Yeah. How'd you get into stage combat though? Like, because I mean, that's where you and I met, was doing Zelda, because Pranch brought you on to handle some of the stage combat and the stunts and whatnot, because we were throwing Jaden all off the walls.
Jaden Walker, right? Yeah. From Tennessee.
Or Texas or something.
Somewhere in America.
Yeah.
He was a nice guy.
I have him on Facebook somewhere.
He was a real nice guy. Yeah. You and I met. I was a stunt coordinator. I guess it started as a consultant, but then I came to actually coordinate, on the Zelda feature.
Yeah.
When I was in university, I went to a program called, it was like Theater and Drama Studies out of U of T, but it's really UTM, but it was a joint program with Sheridan, which is probably why we ended up hooking up, because you're from Sheridan as well. Yeah.
And that's how I know Pranch.
Yeah. Pranch was, my first contact.
Yeah.
In second year of my program, if you were really keen, you could audition to be on the main stage shows. You didn't get on main stage until third or fourth year.
Cool. I
auditioned to be in a show called The Chaste Maid in Cheapside. And that's the thing about university programs. They like, all of them think it's really cool to be like the first company that does a North American performance of whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So this was one of those instances. So it wasn't a terribly like great play. Like the reason why Shakespeare is performed so much is because it's good, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and people generally like it. And whereas a lot of his contemporaries wrote some interesting stuff. So this particular play had a lot of kind of cartoony fighting in it.
Mm-hmm.
But then one totally serious culminating rapier fight scene. And the resident fight director for UTM is Daniel Levinson. So he and his company Rapier Wit came in to give us all like a basic, like a little workshop on stage combat, because so many of us on stage were going to be doing falls or trips or pulls or hair pulls or another thing. Like, you know, technically now actually at Stratford, they have intimacy coaches. So that's kind of the next level where really almost anything that happens on stage, you do want to have someone on the outside kind of watch how that gets created.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so Dan came in and I got to be like, I was like a waterman, like waterman number 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I got like hit in the face a bunch with a frying pan in the funny scene. But I found myself wanting to go to rehearsal a lot to watch the sword fighting because it was just interesting. You know, it was really cool. And it was a style of performance that really valued athleticism,
Mm-hmm.
Creativity, and multitasking, which was a lot of stuff that I wanted to do. I never really thought of myself as like a dancer,
Mm-hmm.
but I definitely think of myself as a mover.
Mm-hmm.
And I prefer playing characters who are allowed to be physically free. I find most of what I do in film and television is like so small and everything's very tiny and everyone wants you to bring it back. So stage combat lets you to,
Go
lets you,
wild.
yeah. It's also, at the point in my career, or I guess it wasn't really my career, it was still my academic training, I was really excited to work with people who wanted to play characters who were aggressive and
Mm-hmm.
violent. And for whatever reason, I found, at least in school, I always played villains.
Yeah.
So it was fun to kind of tap into that kind of acting. Have you ever seen Hugh Jackman do all the noises for Wolverine?
Yes. Yeah.
It's
the
like
ADR.
you get to be crazy, which is something that I think a lot of actors got to try doing at least once in their life, you know? Take yourself to the point where you are kind of outside of yourself.
Yep.
To be clear, I don't think it's ever appropriate when actors kind of forget themselves in the role. I'm not a fan of people like who come off stage and they're like, "Oh, I don't even remember what just happened." Like, no, I want
Get
my
your
actor
shit together, man.
Yeah, I want people to be in charge of what they're
Yeah.
doing.
Well, especially
Yeah.
when you're doing fighting and stunts and shit that can
Well, yeah.
that can hurt you.
And you know, the nice thing is, I can honestly say I have not had too many experiences where I've met someone who's unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, most stage combat injuries, they actually occur because of the floor.
Yeah.
Actors throw themselves at it and they really go for it. And I have given that note like hundreds of times.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have an actor who really thinks like, "Oh, I'm just going to whip myself down to the ground," and they end up hurting their knees or they end up breaking a wrist or something. So, but
well, because I did some stage combat in high school.
Yeah.
Like we had our high school drama program was pretty intensive. And we did in our, I think 10th grade, like a unarmed combat, and in 11th grade sword fighting. And I did the same thing. I went like wild on this. Like me and my buddy that were partnered up for both of those projects were really close friends. So we were pretty comfortable, but we beat the shit out of ourselves. Like there was a point where like I kneed him in the face and he like flung himself down on the hard floor. Like we were bruised after like rehearsing this.
And I mean, that's kind of why I was talking about this with a gentleman. His name is Chris Mott, another actor. He's out of the Rapier Wit, the Rapier Wit camp. He's another great, talented fight director, fight instructor. Him and I were talking about how I really do believe like everyone who's going to be an actor should do a little bit of stage combat training, because you have those experiences where you work with someone where you're totally comfortable and you knee them in the face, and you kind of have to live through that moment to know, okay, I know I was excited and I know I loved the moment, but I also need to be a technician.
Yeah, I didn't actually knee him in the face.
But did he knee you?
No, he actually did uppercut me in the back of the head though. Like there was a point where he uppercutted me and he just caught me like right there, just because it was like he was just supposed to go past, and he just clipped me. and it fucking dazed me for a good like couple minutes. It was like, wow, like I realized that I would not last in a fight. Like,
and what happened right after, like as it happened, was it just
during a rehearsal? Yeah. And so it was just kind of like him being like, oh my God, I'm sorry. And I'm just like, I was laughing at it like a minute later, but for that first like minute, it was like, holy shit, like that was surprising.
And that's how you can always tell that something bad's happened on stage.
Yeah.
If the actors get really quiet, then it's like, okay, he just hurt himself or she just hurt himself or something just did not happen the way it was supposed to. Because
this was just a rehearsal. So it wasn't nothing was on the line for that.
So anyways, I did that play and I totally loved learning stage combat and I decided to do my intensive. So the way we do stage combat performance here in Canada is very similar. We get a lot of what we do from a guy named Paddy Crane, who was he was one of the first stage combat instructors, fight directors, who would have been at Stratford, kind of when Stratford was first very popular. And I'm saying Stratford, Ontario.
Yeah.
So the nice thing is like here in Canada, we have a pretty decent, I would say, pedigree and group of people who perform stage combat. And what we do is we do it like graduated licensing. So just like getting your G license or your driver's license, you first do your basic. And basic's really cool because you do single sword, unarmed, and quarterstaff. Quarterstaff is a 6 foot long pole, kind of like Robin Hood Men in Tights, like what they're fighting with. And even though most people pick it up and they think of Donatello from Ninja Turtles, it's totally not an Eastern martial arts weapon. It's totally like an English style of fighting that you learn. So it's very Robin Hood. So that scene usually ends up being done. But it's cool because it's a two-handed weapon. And that's the first time as an actor combatant, you kind of deal with something in both hands.
Yeah.
Unarmed is fantastic because it's super close. And that's really when you learn about working, in an intimate way with another person. I know for me, kind of getting into the acting world, it took me a long time to be able to touch and reach out and do all that kind of stuff in your performance. But unarmed stage combat really kind of gets you over those fears, any kind of your own fears about your own body. You also you start to work with people and you realize hey, maybe you can't have a smoke on your lunch break because, you're going to be in rehearsal with someone or you don't want to eat onions or, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then the sword we learn is a single, we call it single sword, but it's basically a saber-hilted épée. And for your listeners, an épée blade is the triangular blade that is usually seen on the end of a fencer's blade.
Okay. See, I think of Zelda with the Master Sword had a pointed blade.
Okay, well, so it's not a Master Sword. It would be more like what Arya uses, but without a fancy handle. It's a saber hilted handle, so it's like a full cut.
Remember, I don't watch Game of Thrones.
Oh, my bad.
I'm that asshole.
Well, it's
I get what
you know what I mean.
about,
it's like a fencing blade.
Yeah.
And that's kind of gets all your basics. And the other cool thing that we do in Canada that I mean, we're not the only ones who do it, but we really stress it. We really stress having the actors perform a scene from, like an actual theatrical play. But we don't want you to just do the scene and then do the fight. It's got to be a bit of the scene work, then a bit of the fight, then a bit more of the scene work and a bit more of the fight and plod through. And we also usually have fighters fight to music as well, which is a great lesson for actors to learn because then they learn how to portray a whole story without relying on their text. That's another thing that I think a lot of actors, maybe they don't necessarily think about, but it's anyone who does any of Uta Hagen's classes, like the moment before exercises or any of the object exercises, if you're not allowed to announce to the audience who you are and what you're doing, you really have to be very clear and specific with what you're doing with your body. And that's what I like when we do stage combat and we force students to just fight to music. It really teaches them about understanding what their body is saying while everything else is happening.
Well, so it's almost figuring out how to tell character without actually using dialogue. How to work a character into a type of combat or a type of action or something and tell the audience a story without literally sitting down and telling them a story.
That's, I think, one of the lessons all actors kind of need to learn. And it's definitely, I usually get the note that I'm too big. I'm way too music theater and I'm too, and I do a lot of voiceover too. So I want to be cartoony. But yeah, that's one of those things. You want to learn how to let the audience do half the work.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of actors, I think, they think it's 100% on them to get the whole story to the audience, where it's 50-50. You know, put a little bit here and let them come to you. And learning how to let go of the language and then rely on the body to do that, it's a valuable lesson.
Subtext is just as valuable as text.
I mentioned it before, but yeah, it's that Uta Hagen put out, her Respect for Acting. It's a great book. It's a lot of people have gone through it. And one of the basic object exercises is something called the moment before exercise, where an actor basically just walks on stage 3 different ways. And they don't say any text. They don't do any dialogue, nothing crazy, because they're by themselves and they're just living in their own space. And then it's the people on the outside. So whoever would be at rehearsal, it's their job to judge where they were the moment before. And that teaches you about like, oh yeah, like when I walk on stage, I have to be coming from somewhere for the audience. And when you take away text, you have to rely on those kind of exercises.
There's an experiment, and it's going to drive me nuts because I don't know the name, and as a film student and filmmaker, I should know this. But someone did something similar where they theorized that in film editing, the shots on either side of a person can dictate to the audience the emotion that the character is feeling. So basically, like, they take the exact same shot, like exact literal same shot, same of an actor, and put it after one shot, and they'll interpret that character in that shot as being sad because of just the shot that preceded it. Sure. But then they take the exact same shot of the actor and place it right after something else, like something more positive. And they'll be like, oh, in that, like, the actor's like clearly happy, but it's an identical shot. So it's like you are relying on external factors to sort of actually perform a character. Like there's a lot more that goes into it than just what the actor is saying or doing or whatever gets used, right? Like there's a million different pieces that create a performance for an actor, whether it's on stage or in film.
Yeah,
and it's going to drive me nuts that I can't remember this fucking thing.
That's definitely one of those things that I think a lot of actors, they don't realize there's all those other elements that are happening behind the camera and in post.
An actor's best friend is the editor.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've never shot on film. I've only ever shot digital. But like every gig I've ever done, we do what the director wanted, and then we do what the client wanted, and then we do all the other takes. Yeah. And then it's someone's job to piece together the full story. And if it ends up being a really fun commercial, I did a part of it, but not the whole part of it, and there's definitely lots of times where I've done a shoot where I think, I don't know how it's going to look, but it ends up looking lovely because, as you said, there's a lot of magic that can happen behind the camera.
When you're on set, you really have no idea if you're making anything good. Like it's really like you could have all the planning and everything laid out. No one will have any idea actually how a project is turning out on set. Like the day is going well, but this film could suck. It's almost impossible to tell if you've actually got a good piece, because even if you have excellent actors doing the performance that you wanted in pre-production or in the scripting, and then when you take it to post, like your editor could screw up and just pick bad stuff, or the director could be too stubborn to see something that the editor might suggest, or in the world of commercials, you have clients down the line.
No, I love the clients.
They're great for the paycheck, but you have no idea how well, despite how well it's going on the day,
totally, if
this is actually going to end up good. There's so many things that could go wrong at some point afterwards.
It's happened to me several times that I believe this is just like a thing in the industry, but it'll be like the director wants the commercial to go one way, which is a little bit more authentic feeling and a little bit more maybe cinematic feeling, but the client really wants it to go the advertising way and salesy way. Yep. So you just have to satisfy everybody.
Battle of the commercial director.
I can imagine that's probably a lot of that.
Oh, there's tons of it. I get where they're coming from, especially from a client perspective who is paying for a whole project, right? Like ultimately you've got to you got to bend at their whim.
It's their stuff.
Exactly. You can fight them to a certain point, but like you'll be cutting something and you'll be like, this is like, it's a great little story. And they're like, yeah, but it's not salesy enough. Is that going to drive sales or drive revenue? And it's like, I guess. It's like a total eternal battle.
I to bring it back to stage combat, when I did my fight instructor certification, so you do your basic, then you do intermediate, then you do advanced. Mm-hmm. Then if you decide you want to move past just being an actor, you want to actually teach it, you go to fight instructor and then fight director. And then I think we have a couple of honorary positions like a fight master. But when
that's a pretty badass title.
It is pretty cool. And there are several of them here in the country. They're called fight masters.
That's incredible.
And it is pretty cool.
I would love that to be my title.
It is pretty. I'd like to see that on a business card. Fight master.
Mike Shantai.
Yeah.
Fight master.
But so I was doing my instructor cert, and one of the lessons was being taught by a guy named Simon Fawn. He's a very popular fight director in the city, and he's done a lot of work. Probably even a lot of work that people listening right now have seen, because he's just one of those guys. And I remember he taught me that you have to, like, at least as a director and as a creative, you have to be good at putting out offers, but you also have to be good at like editing and cutting away and not being too precious with your work. We were the assignment that he had given myself, Nathan Bitten, and Robert Montcalm. The three of us were all getting our fight certification the same year. We were all given some text, and we had to do a found weapon scene. So found weapon is a category of advanced actor combatant fighting, where basically we want you to fight with stuff you might find around an apartment. So it's a lot of like breakaway glass, chairs, and then the difficulty of swinging something that's maybe not meant to be swung. So like a chair or, a piece of metal or I don't know. But anyway, so we did a found fight, and the assignment was, here's your text, here's your actors, here's your props, go make something. And I remember Fawn had just really taught us about learn how to just say, okay, that idea didn't work, move on to something else.
Yeah.
And I remember myself and a guy named Robert Montcalm got the same scene, but we had an opportunity to use different props. So I just used every prop that he didn't use because I wanted to do everything the opposite, and I had like an idea, and because he had the scene and he already had grabbed some things, I had to completely throw it out the window.
Yep.
But I ended up creating this weird absurdist piece that was very strange, and it had a toilet seat in it, and it was being used really weird in like a way that, some of the fight masters who watched it were like,
that's interesting.
Never seen a toilet seat used like that before.
Yeah.
Which was really cool. And I actually managed to sneak a whole nap in plain view, and none of the fight masters could catch where it was.
A whole...
So a nap, K-N-A-P,
okay,
is what we use. It's that.
Yeah.
So because of the silver screen, we have Foley Artists.
Oh, okay.
Because in fighting, punching doesn't really make a noise. But during like the era of John Wayne movies, we wanted to hear those big... those big hits. So we have Foley Artists.
So it's like live Foley.
You got it. So in stage combat, we have to have those noises because audiences then don't understand what's going on. It's funny. It's like it happens so fast that you don't really know what's wrong, but something's wrong. And then, the actors move on. So modern audiences, they need to hear those noises. So we have to put them in. So one of the jobs of a fight instructor or a fight director is knowing where the majority of the audience's eyes are and knowing how to then hide naps not where they are. And that's kind of where we're similar to kind of like sleight of hand magician. Totally. Yeah. So I had like a nap that was, it was very loud. It was with the toilet seat.
Yeah.
And it was in full plain view, but because we were doing something so weird, I was able to sneak it past everybody. So I was pretty proud of that.
Nice.
That's cool.
See, this is why I like doing these, because I've never heard that terminology before.
Oh, cool.
I mean, I did stage combat in high school, and I've never done live theater since then. So,
and one of the reasons why, at least in Canada, we're so strict about our language is because we want everybody to be able to do this across the country.
Yeah.
Rapier Witt's sister school in Vancouver is called Academy Duello, and they use naps just like us. They use all the same parries. And that's really the hope, that if enough of us all use this language, then we all have the same codified language and we all can work.
It's kind of like
other.
rock climbing.
Probably, yeah.
Because I mean, I do
totally
rock climbing as well, and there's like, to blast up a climb really quickly is referred to as a flash. You flashed that, or cool. Or like the outdoor rock climbing is you're climbing in a crag. Like there's all this like. I mean, it's the same in film too, I guess. There's lots of terminology and shit that we all use. That,
the martini shot, isn't that
exactly.
like the last shot of the day or something?
Because then you go have a martini after, or the window shot. There's a bit of
what's the window shot?
So the window shot is also the last shot. Although I've heard the martini shot is the second last shot of the day.
Okay.
The window shot
is the last
shot, because after that you'll be going to the window to get your paycheck. For the day. Like there's all sorts of like weird terminologies that get used. I guess it must be like that in every business.
Totally.
Just filmmaking. So
I part of my communication stuff is I'm doing videography now. And it's like nothing compared to this. Like it's very small scale, very mom and pop shop business. But a friend of mine works for a company called Northern Mat and Bridge. And he sent me all of this footage that he shot with a drone, and he had some truck shots. And basically what his company does is they provide mats. They provide access to construction sites. But like, this is a product I didn't even know existed. But
hey man, if you can think of it, there's a job doing it.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
Yes. So anyways, that's another example where like they sent me this footage and I had no idea what it was. So then I said, well, send me what I'm looking at. So they gave me like a little write-up of what it was. But even then I needed explanations because I don't know what an HD Trax is or a power trans thing, like, all that stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I would have never thought about like live Foleying in a fight scene. Like, cause I mean, I understand we did like when we were doing combat, it was like, punching your hand to try to sell a hit or something. But yeah, like that's got to sell to like a whole theater.
Totally.
Like that's it has to project, so it can't necessarily just be your hand hitting, like your fist hitting another hand.
Yeah, and that's one of those things too. Some people make better noises than others.
Yeah.
So in basic, we start teaching where all the naps go.
Yeah.
And yeah, there will always be someone in class who's like super. They reverberate. Yeah. So it's just like they really like wide. Like I've got a pretty big chest, so I make them really big.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've had lots of people who they just don't make any noise. So then you have to be kind of creative. So there's a bunch of different ways we would do a nap. There's
full disclosure, when you first said the word nap, you're like, I snuck a nap. I was like, so why didn't you just like
have
just
go
pass out a little bit sleep for a few minutes?
Well, I've done that on set a few times. So yeah. Actually Ed, when I'm Ed, he dies halfway through the show and he lays on stage with his legs for the audience to see, but like you can't move anywhere. And like there have been so many performances where you're laying there and this is like the 20th time you've done it this month. And you're like nodding off. And it's like, oh my God, it's a live show. Don't nod off. Don't nod off.
Can't fall asleep right now.
No, my God. Oh my God. Can you imagine? I miss your call.
I can't imagine because I'm not a live theater actor. Man. So
that would be like the worst show to wake up and have to go and do.
Just getting doused with blood and
it's awful. Well, no, it's not awful. It's super exciting for the audiences.
Yeah.
But there's a moment, basically what happens in Evil Dead is Annie, who's trailing on her way up to the cabin with her fiance Ed, who I play. Annie starts to fall in love with Ash, and this kind of becomes the duo. And it's Annie who ends up giving Ash the chainsaw, and so he puts it on his hand, and there's this really great kind of triumphant moment. Yeah. But basically, once that moment is done, he starts singing this ballad and the zombies kind of all start waking up, and it goes from like a Michael Jackson-esque zombie dance to a super rock power ballad to ballet to what we call the bloodbath.
I really wish I went and saw this.
Wow, you got to go see it. It's like a staple of Toronto.
Yeah, I know.
It's like a staple.
Next time it's around, I have to hit it.
It's a great date night too. Yeah, because everyone gets soaked and it's fun. And sit in the blood seats. It's way more fun to sit in the blood seats.
I don't know if I could sell that to Melissa. Oh. she might not jive with the blood seats.
When we were in Cleveland, so it was kind of scary. But when I was my very first tour, my very first opening night, the guy who played Ed, he got sick. Mm-hmm. So not only was I still having to be the fake Shemp in Cleveland in 2015 for my very first gig,
Yeah.
I also walked on as a part that I hadn't performed
Really
in
performed.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, because that's the other part about theater. There's never enough time for rehearsal. And the little bit of time you do have, you have to do a million other things. So it's just, you never feel like you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
And that was terrifying because I went out and I had to do this
New
whole
role,
performance.
basically.
Yeah, it was terrifying. But
And in Cleveland, which is already looks like the zombie apocalypse most of the time.
I mean, it kind of does downtown a little bit.
Yeah, it was okay. What the one time I was in Cleveland was the weirdest thing because it's like 5 p.m. on a Tuesday, and it was a ghost town, like in the downtown area. I was like, "Where the hell is everybody?"
They bus in, man.
Is
They
it-
just commute in.
But I didn't see buses. I felt like there was no humans anywhere. I was like, "What the fuck is happening?"
Growing up wanting to do musical theater, like you end up listening to a lot of like good kind of classic music theater, and Little Shop of Horrors is one of those classics. And in the opening number, it's all about like living downtown, how living downtown is awful. And like my whole life, I've never understood that song because that is like Toronto downtown is so expensive and there's so much going on and there's
a zoo constantly.
Whereas like in America, or at least in the US when I've toured, I've been to a lot of cities where it's like downtown is not where you want to be and there's not a ton of people there.
That's
you
so
know, it's
bizarre
everyone's
to
living in
me.
the suburbs.
Yeah, I mean, everyone lives in the suburbs too here, but there's also just so many people in Toronto. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm used to Toronto being like such a huge hub of this area that maybe Cleveland is not that kind of hub for there. Because I mean, like I've also been to LA, which is also a zoo on the streets, although more in the Chinese theater area, not the like downtown type space. But
I did 2 weeks, or I guess it was just 1 week, but it felt like 2 weeks. No,
so it was a really
no, it was
long
fun.
week.
It was fun. It was just the thing about Evil Dead is it's not exactly the kind of show. In the Halloween months, you could put it up for an entire month and get new audiences and
every day.
You totally could. But the problem is like in February, it's hard to get a ton of people who would want to see this. So sometimes I think
or just people who are going to trek out in the winter.
Totally. So it tends, I think its model is best when it's like a one performance or like one weekend in a town and then you're out of there. But we were in St. Louis for a long stay, and that whole city felt like the center was just empty, like just like not populated, and it was like everywhere there was like rents and like rental units and it was like for sale signs everywhere. Not like in Toronto where it's like that unit is going for $3 million and it's a fixer upper.
Yeah, I know. Toronto sucks like that.
It's crazy.
So here's my question. Do you like doing live stuff more or
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah?
I think I don't know. I love nothing more than showing some film work to someone. So we shot The Talk, right?
Yeah.
And The Talk was a
Right
lot of
here.
fun. Right in this literal space.
That was the last time you were here.
Yes.
Actually, no, we've gotten a new table. This is
Is this new?
No, we got rid of the other. The other one has gone to Valley Village,
Oh,
off to its new home somewhere.
New home.
Yeah.
Live at a farm with other tables.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's it.
So like getting to show that off and knowing that it went to a couple of festivals or it was at least submitted for a couple of things.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. Also, Sapphire Demetrios was in that as my co-star, and so was Jonathan Shabu. Both
you
great
just brought
actors.
the cast to that.
They were
That
great,
was-
and they were both from Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were Evil Dead actors, so that was great, and that was a lot of fun. So it's really exciting to share that with people. But a lot of times you don't get to live kind of the life of the character.
Yeah.
In the same way that you do with like a live performance. So, doing the full character arc is a really satisfying thing as an actor, and especially if you've got an interesting turn, in your character arc. When I was younger, I kind of was upset that I was always playing villains, but I'm very happy that I got a chance to play some really kind of complicated roles and some more technical bits. But yeah, totally living like a live performance in the span of 2 hours is such a roller coaster for a performer. I mean, obviously there's all those fears of like, you don't want to miss a line or you don't want to, if you're doing any stage combat, you don't want to hurt anybody. And if you're singing, you don't want to crack. And I know that's I think a common fear for some performers because yeah, you're doing a show for 90 performances. One of them, you're not going to be good.
Yeah,
you know?
something is going to go wrong at some point. Yeah.
But it's harder to find those kinds of opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels as though modern audiences don't appreciate it as much as they appreciate other forms of media.
I think that could be because of our ever shrinking attention spans.
Yeah, you're probably right.
You know what I mean? It's we like our short bites of content, and to go to a theater and sit there for 2 hours or something, which, I mean, we're still going to see movies and stuff, but I feel like even that is, unless it's a huge spectacle Marvel movie or something, like people like these movies aren't making.
Well, we talked about Endgame, right?
Yeah.
Like that was, I think, the last movie I went to go see, and I wanted to see it because I wanted to be there with everybody, and I wanted to kind of live that roller coaster.
Yeah, that was an event.
Yeah, so I think audiences will still want that. But you're right. If you're doing a show on a Wednesday night, are you going to get audiences who want to deal with Toronto traffic? I can tell you that one of the most, like, not soul crushing, but definitely like powerful moments in my career as an artist, I did a show called Airplane Jelly, and it was directed
like stage play.
It was a stage play called Airplane Jelly, and Airplane Jelly is. It's like what they eat in New Zealand and Australia. It's like their form of Jello.
Okay. Sounds gross.
It's just Jello. It's just Jello. It's just called Airplane Jelly.
I think Jello is gross as well.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. So, this play was a really cool concept, and on paper, it should have worked. It really should have worked. The guy who wrote it was a huge Fallout fan. So his concept was, imagine if like 3 people lived in a Fallout, the video game series. Yeah. So imagine like in a Fallout, a nuclear Fallout, people were living in vaults, or, I guess vaults.
Yeah.
What would happen to like 3 men who maybe entered the vault when they were 10 years old, and now they're 30, and they've been living with this like mutant kind of character who's been sort of taking care of them, but not really. And then that's just what the play was. And then I played a second character, the outsider, who was basically Road Warrior. Like, it was like I dressed like the Road Warrior. I had the leather, I had the armor only on one part of my body, the shotgun, all that kind of stuff. And we were at an art gallery on Richmond Street in Toronto, and we had a no-show night. Meaning we nobody bought any tickets.
Oh man,
whatsoever. And like when you're an actor, you don't. Well, sorry, that's not true. But you generally, at least in my experience, I never know what the ticket sales are like. I mean, sometimes you're really close to the people, and they're like, "Yeah, we sold out. Great, everyone, let's go for it." But you don't. Generally, you just assume if you're at the theater and you're putting your costume on, people have bought tickets.
Somebody there.
And also, our show had one of those, I don't know if you've ever seen a show where like the actors are on stage before the audience gets there. It's like one of those, like, they're living in the space kind of thing. It's kind of avant-garde kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel like I saw it once.
Sure.
And I think they did, if I recall correctly, I think it started like that. Like they were just, because it was like a bar set. Sure. And it was just there at the bar and in character.
You discover the actors there. Yeah. So we were there, and we were
fucking nobody's there.
And then all of a sudden the director walked out. It was like, nobody bought a ticket.
Oh my God.
And we're just like, okay.
Like, not a single person.
Not one person. And then, and
like, so what do? You just cancel it for the night?
We literally just, you get up, you take your costume off, and you go home for the night.
It's a bummer.
It was a super bummer, but it was also kind of an important lesson I had to learn, in that it's so hard to get people to come to your show. Yeah. So you really have to focus on your marketing and your advertising, your outreach.
Yeah.
And you also have to have something that you think people will want to see. Simply just because you put it up, or because you think the play has a great message, doesn't necessarily mean people are going to come and buy tickets to it. And this was one of those plays where we didn't have like a grand statement. It's just, it was weird. And it was an Australian director, and it was not her debut directing, but it was one of her first Canadian performances.
Pretty new.
Well, new to Canada, but not new to acting. So it felt like we were doing something amazing. We had a mutant, we had some special effects. We were also in the basement of an art gallery and they let us really decorate. So like the audience got a chance to walk through kind of garbage and more of like a site. It felt site specific, even though it was a gallery. But yeah, even though we had all those elements together, it just didn't come together.
You did it for some people though.
Yeah, totally.
It wasn't like a one time only and just nobody showed.
So that's the problem with acting nowadays. Anybody, even people listening right now who have never acted once in their life, you can totally be an actor. You just go out and you just do it with a community theater.
Yeah.
And you'll get a weekend of performances. So most likely you'll rehearse a play for like 3 months. Maybe on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Sundays.
Yeah.
And then you might have one weekend, like a Friday or maybe like a Thursday open dress or something. A Friday show, Saturday mat, Saturday evening, and then Sunday mat, close. Then strike.
Yeah.
And you'll get your experience. The problem though is that if you really want to like grow, I think as an artist, is you do want to find a few jobs or gigs where you can live with the character for many performances. I mean,
but it's I think is it not very tough to do that though? Because I mean, in theater, there's X amount of shows happening at any point and they're casted up and that's the cast for however long the show runs, unless you've got unless you got your understudies and whatnot. But like, that feels like you're definitely fighting an uphill battle to try to get these theater roles, especially ones that are long lasting.
And think about actors, like actors generally, like they try and keep in good shape and they play ages way younger than them. So like, the next time Starvox does an Evil Dead, they might recast. I don't know. I honestly don't know. But let's say they did, that cast could have a couple of years of it. Of just them doing it, which means no one will else get that job. So you're totally right. When you get the character for a while,
it's yours.
Yeah,
like
and that's something I think most artists should at least try to live with one time, because anybody can do one performance of Shakespeare one night, and do an okay job. It really takes like a level of maturity and experience to be able to kind of bring the same enthusiasm to a role that's appropriate for the audiences who have paid, but that's also not stale and boring. And, you don't want to make the same old choices every night. And you don't want to be bored at work, right? Yeah. You don't want to bore your co-stars. So you do have to keep things lively, and it can be exhausting when you're out on the road, no support, and you got to keep that energy up.
I was going to say too, like, I mean, from a financial perspective, unless you're booking like Mervish type plays, a lot of this stuff is volunteer, isn't it? Like, or like low paid, like
community theater is all volunteer.
Yeah, I know community.
Yeah, theater is, so that's like hobby stuff, like rec baseball. There's probably no other gigs that are paid unless it's with a touring company, and even then, I wouldn't even really count Mervish as a job that you could get here in Canada, because they usually bring in American casts. So you can find kids performing. You can find children's companies. You can find touring shows. And that's why I think a lot of people, they get a chance to do a performance where it's like maybe Dora the Explorer, and you'll go to like Brampton for a day and do that show. And you might do 2 venues of it, or two versions of it that day. And then again and again and again. But you're right. It's very difficult to keep yourself up just with theater. So that's why most people move into the world of commercials and film and television. And then if you're lucky enough to be seen at the right kind of audition and you put up the good takes, then you might get a little money in your pocket, which is good.
Do you like doing commercials though? Like,
yes and no. Okay. I mean, I do. And I honestly, I don't think there's anything bad about doing commercials. I tend to watch a lot of TV, so I tend to watch commercials, and I think some of them are quite good. I mean, some of them are cheesy, and I've definitely had my fair share of, I've been on a set that the script is cheesy, the costume's cheesy, the way they've lit it is cheesy, but the director is really set on this like cool cinematic performance, and it's just, you can tell like sometimes their ideas are too, like it's too much,
too grandiose.
And it's like, hey, let's just sell some paper, or like
Dunder Mifflin style.
Yeah, like let's just sell some paper. The last set I was on, it was an office supply commercial.
Mm.
And yeah, the clients kind of wanted one color. The director really wanted a different color, which was very cinematic and very personal and very connected to their experience. Yeah, it was kind of difficult marrying the two. So those are the instances when being on a commercial set isn't the most fun.
Yeah.
The other thing too is I think a lot of people don't really realize this. When a commercial is being created, it's really being created by a company that only exists for maybe a month. You know what I mean? Like, so you've got your ad agency, you've got your casting agency, if there's any talent, you've got your marketing agency, if that's also what they're using, you've got your clients department of their, all of their different departments. Then you've got a director who's probably coming in because they're really good or they have a prior relationship. Yeah. A production assistant, maybe a director of cinematography who's different, who maybe they've never worked together. Like, so it's the smattering of like, maybe like, let's say 100 people who have never worked together. And then in the space of like a month, cram everything in. And that I think is what leads to any kind of problems on set. Yeah. Like if you don't have an experienced crew that knows what's important in shooting and what's not important, you can kind of miss things. That being said, though, the fun part about being in commercials is sometimes something you do is like really funny or people really like it or it gets run a lot. So
like I said, I've seen you while I'm watching like Brooklyn Nine-Nine,
which is amazing. So yeah,
just like, there's Andy.
My first kind of example, or I guess the Planet Fitness one I shot was on a couple of popular shows that people saw. I was in a Kit Kat commercial a couple of years ago. It was 1980s, and I was like the director of some 1980s music video. And I'm honestly, I'm in it for like a second. Like you just see me, and then I'm just like, I'm upset with what I'm seeing. And that was on MTV. So that was great because I had so many young people messaging me being like, hey, was that you? And yeah, that's me. And now I'm really lucky. A Nescafe.
I was going to say, I think the Brooklyn, I saw the Nescafe thing while watching a Brooklyn Nine-Nine
full
episode.
Canadian TV, national, just like buyout. Yeah. So non-union project.
Yep.
So it's just one-time buyout, but still very good for me in that people get to see it. People get to see me, my face. These are my actual glasses.
Was that legit though?
Yes.
Okay. So contextually, it's a little cafe type thing, and you're like hidden camera kind of style, and people are buying a coffee, and then all of a sudden shit pops up and they like lock the doors at some, like what, how did that go down? Like,
so it was really cool. The concept was Nescafe brought out this new product called Gold. Yeah. And Nescafe, their whole thing is it's supposed to taste like coffee shop coffee, but it's at home. So their original concept, and I mean, as a creator, the original concept is this, and then it kind of turns into this. I think the original one was supposed to be like instantly this person takes a sip and they're in the coffee shop. Okay. But they didn't want to do that.
Because you were like in a little pop-up type thing, right?
So that idea came about. Yeah. So we were at a mall at Richmond Hill. And you know how like at a mall there might be like a seasonal shop that's kind of like not being used for
the Halloween stores?
You got it. Yep. Yeah. So they set up the crew and everything in the Halloween shop and it was all blacked out. And what they did was they built 4 walls that would like kind of Jenga together on casters. So they would roll, and they had hidden cameras on the walls, and they had lights built into the walls and like a little plug. So like once it was in position, all they had to do was like hit a button, and then like a little mini battery was running everything, which was really cool. And then there were 2 extras sitting next to me to sell like that it wasn't awkward that I was standing in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. Like without anything. Because like the other thing too is like I was standing with nothing. Like I didn't have my phone. I didn't have a bag. I didn't have anything. Like no coat. And like when was the last time you were somewhere when you didn't have anything? Yeah. And it's like
we're always staring at our phones.
You got it. So what they did was they put 2 extras next to me staring at their phones. And then kind of like on this carpet in the middle of a hallway at the mall, that's like where the shop would eventually go around. Yeah. So we had marks. And then there was one dude with like a winter coat hiding his camera, sitting with the extras, like sipping on a coffee, just kind of like just trying to sell that there's just people
Nothing's
here.
Happening.
You got it. Yeah. And then there were some hidden cameras like in the trash bins, and there was some dudes kind of like hanging out, like, you know, who being nondescript, and then they would show. And then I had like an earpiece, and the clients were there with the directors, with all the creatives. And basically we would have eyes down both hallways of the mall. And just by the way it worked, really only worked with people coming from one direction. So they would just keep a camera on, and I would, you know, say, like, they could hear me. So I would say, like, hey, what do you think about her or him? And then they would him and haw, and the clients would decide, yeah, we like her or we don't or whatever. Sometimes like it sucks for them. Sometimes we'd have a great civilian, but they had too much stuff in their hands. So they'd have like too much shopping stuff, and then they wouldn't be able to drink, or they wouldn't, you know, or they'd.
How did you present it to them again? Like, how did it?
So basically, what I was doing, it was painful at the start, because I think the director thought like maybe like in another life I was like really suave, so I could like pick up people, and like I'm not at all. So I was having a tough time getting people to talk to me. A lot of times people thought I was like a salesman. But we figured it out. Asking a question in Canada, it will usually result in a polite exchange back and forth. So all I would do is if the client said they liked a person, I'd kind of start playing that I was looking at my watch and kind of just like looking around. And then when they get close, I'd maybe make eye contact and say like, hey, is there a coffee shop around here? And then generally most people would try to be helpful. So then they'd walk right into the perfect mark and then talk to me. And then at that point, the client would have a good chance to kind of just see what they looked like, how they sounded. And if they liked them, they would say, look, hey, Andy, like, go. And then my cue was, do you like coffee? And most people say like, yeah, sure, I love a coffee. And then they would go action, and the doors would fling open. And then all I had to do was kind of just like direct the person to stay on the X. And then, these 3 walls would come out, and then the 4th wall would swing around here, and they would all lock together. And the camera guys were getting great reactions, and, you know, they're looking around, and then we would do the scene where I would like have a coffee for them, and we'd just talk about it, and then see how much stuff we could get. Because
I think there's it's definitely been cut up into multiple versions.
Yeah, there's 4
like,
versions.
You shot that a while ago too, right?
Like last winter.
Yeah. So because I'd seen multiple variations of it, and then when I was watching Brooklyn one night, it popped up, but it was a really short. Like it might have even been a 15 second.
Yeah. There's 2 15, a 30, and a 60.
And a 60. Because that's why I was just like, I couldn't remember the context of how it was just like all of a sudden, like, there's Andy, it's coffee, it's over.
You know what was really cool? It really was civilians.
Yeah.
So a lot of people ask me, like, because it does say on the bottom, no actors.
Yeah, because I mean, they also say that about those terrible Chevy commercials.
Have you seen the company that makes fun of them,
the
though?
YouTube video, like that so with
funny.
Mac.
I love Mac. Mac and those millennials and cars. Oh, Mac is so funny.
Oh, I love that color. What is that? Burnt rust?
JD Power.
JD
Power hammer.
It turns out that's just a made up
that
award.
Guy is so funny.
No shit. Like,
hilarious.
It kills me.
Yes.
Like, I wish I could come up with something as simple and beautiful as what they have done to those Chevy commercials.
They're ridiculous. They're ridiculous.
It's so good.
And you know what's funny? You mentioned that. I know some people who have been on those sets.
On the Chevy
ones.
Yeah.
And the way they get around the whole, these aren't actors, is that like they're all like, it's like they themselves are saying like, yeah, I'm an actor, but I'm also not an actor today. Like today I'm going to be like a model who like gives you my opinion. And then it's like, I'm not an actor. Because like I've seen like my friends in those commercials, and you're like, no, that guy's an actor.
You're an actor.
Yeah.
Don't fucking lie to me.
And then, the only time we're not being truthful is there's one version of the spot where there's no dialogue. And there's this actress sitting down. Her name is Suzanne Kiernan. And she's just chilling, kind of sipping on a coffee. And we just kind of melt like around her. So like the doors all just kind of go around her, and she's just kind of like playing like what's going on. That one had to be an actor because they didn't have the insurance, I guess, or the liability coverage in case like something fell or did something on a civilian. Okay. I guess they also probably thought they couldn't get someone might to just like, randomly
what is happening?
Yeah, and then that would waste the whole take.
Yeah. Did you just shoot that? Was it all in one day?
Yeah, we shot that all in one day. I think like it was so funny because the crew that shot it, they normally shoot sports.
Yeah.
I think his name was Whitey.
Sports, you got to be on your shit. Yeah. So I know that.
I forget his last name. Whitey was the name of the director.
Whitey.
And he is like, when you made him, you'd be like, oh, you've shot skateboarding movies. Or you've shot snowboarding. Like you've shot for Transworld, probably. And that's where he got his start, shooting like X Games type stuff. And his entire crew was all like mostly sports shooters or sports cinematographers, I guess. And but then I guess this crew had transitioned into activation shoot. So that's what they call it. It's like the activation starts and then they just shoot as much as they can throughout the day.
Poor editors.
Yeah. Well, you know what was funny? I was on a different activation shoot for Lucky Charms once where I was
sports. That was with Jackie.
It
from
was.
Sportsnet.
It was, and yeah, that was another
that
day
was
where
very near the end of Jackie's time at Sportsnet.
Was it?
Yeah, I think that was within maybe 3 or 4 months. She was
so polite.
Yeah.
It was so funny though. I didn't know I was going to meet her that day. So that was a shoot for Lucky Charms. The whole spot was Dare to Be a Kid, and it was done by an advertising agency called Diamond, I think, Diamond & Co. And it was all Dare to Be a Kid. So the premise was they were going to do 3 different spots. One was like hopscotch, one was a monster truck, and one was a big wheel in the city. And the idea was they would kind of proposition a civilian walking up to them. You know, you can either do the humdrum adult thing, which is like get a cab, or you could take our, Lucky Charms monster truck around the city. And that was like a cool gig for me because they hired me as an actor, but I actually I'm like hardly on camera. The cameras were all pointed at the people I gave rides to.
Yeah.
But it was crazy. I drove like a monster truck in downtown Toronto on this loop during rush hour. It was a nightmare. Not only would it have been a nightmare for the editors.
I hate driving in Toronto in my Saturn Astra.
Dude,
like
try and get across Yonge Street at 5:00 in a giant Lucky Charms monster truck that blows bubbles. It's a great spot though. So it's, check it out.
I mean, like from an acting perspective, you're not totally acting in something like that. But I mean, but it's just like cool opportunities to do stuff that so few people actually get to do. That spot and the Nescafe spot, really what they needed was someone who knows how to just get people to talk and interact. Yeah.
I had to memorize a couple of like things about Nescafe or Lucky Charms, but for the most part, it was about how do you kind of finesse a person to say kind of what you want them to say. So it's like when I was doing the monster truck gig, it was, I'm a decent driver and I'm kind of responsible, but I was also pretty good at like getting this guy to dance, and like, or maybe a suggestion or like, hey, why don't you like scream at those girls or something and see if they'll wave at us. And that usually that would normally get a good response. But yeah, coolest day ever. I get to text all my friends, hey, I'm learning how to drive a monster truck today. So I had to go up to like, somewhere up in like Yorkville. These guys. Was that like a separate day? Like it was a separate day. It was super fun. These guys. So it wasn't technically a monster truck. It was the biggest street legal mod that you can have. Okay. So it was a Ford F-250 on stacks with mud tires, but they painted it red and full. They had like a box of Lucky Charms at the back that had bubbles coming out of it, and they had a big horn and crazy cool stuff on the inside. It was really fun. But yeah, that was one of those days where you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm a commercial actor because I get to do this. The only downside is you usually can't share any of that cool stuff because it's all branded. Yeah. And they obviously don't want you sharing it. Yeah. Or at least until after it's like aired. Yeah. Once it's aired, then it's free game. Yeah. It's kind of the feeling I had too when I was first went out to British Columbia for a Sportsnet shoot, and I was like on a wake surfing boat with 2 NHL players that are brothers, and we got them to go wake surfing, and we had like GoPros in their hands, a drone following them, cool. Camera in the boat. And I was like, I'm getting paid to do this. Like, this is insane. Pretty damn cool. When I went to school for filmmaking, it's like, I never thought that these are kinds of the experiences that I would get to do. And it's totally not in line with what I thought my career a direction my career would go at any point. But I'm kind of really thankful that it did, because I've gotten to do some just cool shit that so few people actually get to do ever. Totally. I feel like as I'm continuing on in my career, I'm collecting like experiences. Yeah. And definitely as an actor, I feel like so many experiences on set have led to that. It's like whether you're being on a boat ferried out to your set in the ocean, or you're learning how to drive a monster truck, or someone's, giving you a shotgun and you're learning how to shoot it to then blow someone's head off. It's kind of an interesting experience, to say the least.
But despite those experiences that you get to doing these like commercial projects, a couple friends that I have that are actors kind of stopped doing commercials because even though they might be getting those kinds of roles, they felt like it wasn't fulfilling because they wanted to act. You know what I mean? And like sometimes they'd get that role where it's like, eat the McDonald's hamburger like it's the greatest moment of your life, like, is that tough? Like, do you ever combat that too?
I mean, yes and no, absolutely. Yeah. Like, I feel most people, I think, become actors because they enjoy role playing and they enjoy fantasy. So anytime you get to play, I think you can have fun on set, but you're totally right. Like, some acting on commercial sets is so not natural because you're servicing the client and the product and whatever story they're trying to tell that you just feel like a monkey and you're just dancing. So I mentioned that Kit Kat commercial. Yeah. That was in it. You can still see it online if you search it. It's on YouTube. It's like Kit Kat 1980s or just Kit Kat 80s. There's this moment where like I'm on camera and I'm like watching a music video. And then the next shot is the camera's right behind us. So what we're doing is we're turning to look at the camera. And it's like classic Kit Kat. You bite the thing, you break it, you bite it, you smile, and whatever. Look for the camera. But what I tell a lot of people who don't do this industry, or at least who don't live in this industry, is that the most normal and natural things can feel so unnatural when you're doing them for the camera. So in this instant, like, turn, look at the camera, have a bite of chocolate. That's not that hard. It's totally impossible to do when you have to do it in 1 second. You have to hold the wrapper with the writing perfect. You have to get the break exactly the way they want it. And of course, they're trying to get sound on it, even though that's no point of getting sound on it. You have to take the bite.
That's a client request, right?
Oh, totally.
That's like all the producers, directors, all the sound guys are going like, no, we don't need this. No. We will add it later. And they're like, but no, it needs to be authentic. Yeah. And then they replace it anyway afterwards and no one notices.
So that was a day where I literally turned, broke, and dealt with a stupid rapper pointing to the camera and smiling and chewing and swallowing. And it's like, and I know I probably sound like a baby complaining about it, but that was one of those days where you're like, I don't know if the paycheck is worth this.
Yeah.
Like, I really don't feel like an artist. I feel like a prop being used. And that's why I've been trying to at least maybe limit my time on too many non-union sets, just because I find the non-union sets, they really kind of treat you like a piece of furniture. Not to say that sometimes not to say that they're sometimes not great. Yeah. It's just sometimes, you're right. You don't feel fulfilled and you don't get to play a character. But then other times you get to tap into a different skill set, which I think is actually being able to do that horrible copy fast again and again and again on cue, perfect, in focus. I think that's another great story. But you're totally right. Yeah, it's you don't feel the same emotion that you do when you finish a performance of Ash Williams. Yeah. Like when you finish Evil Dead, you're soaked and you've lived an entire 90 minutes as this running super god of action machismo. It's amazing. Like, you get to kiss the girl. It's great. You get it all. And that doesn't even, like, that's nowhere. That's an experience that is amazing compared to the crap that you sometimes do on commercials. But
it's finding the compromise, right?
It's finding the balance too. Totally.
And not only that, I mean, it's a very big business, but it's a very small business in that, like, you might meet a producer on a commercial shoot who then later needs somebody, they think of you, and it could be a sick role, like even if it's a commercial role or something, like, but you also have that skill set and that you do like emceeing and stuff as well. Like you're an overall performer. Like,
I would think so. That's a great way to classify it.
That's why I think of you as an actor, but I think of you as a performer more than that.
I'm glad you do. That's really good.
When I think of Andy, I think performer, not just actor.
I definitely have in my later parts of my career, I started calling myself or considering myself more of a performance artist. Because really, this industry, like the media industry, it's all about takes.
Yeah.
So if you can get two good takes at your audition, you'll get a callback.
Yeah.
And then if you manage to get one good take with the director, something that they were looking for, you might get that gig. But you're totally right. It is more about performance. But yeah, let me tell you, I've been doing more hosting.
Yeah.
And emceeing.
Yeah, because that was like, I think we tried to schedule this one day, and then you said you had a host gig of some sort.
It was the next morning.
Oh, okay.
It was a farmer's market in Brampton.
Okay.
Yeah. So Brampton's my hometown.
Okay.
And I still, so when I was transitioning out of university, I got some Shakespeare in the Square opportunities. And that's something they used to do at the City of Brampton, where they would put on a bit of Shakespeare in front of Ken Willen's Square, or in front of the Rose Theater on their big fountain. It's called the Lorna Bissell Fountain. Beautiful venue, challenging venue because it's a main street. It's a lot of noise and a lot of people. And we used to do Shakespeare there. And I really loved it because Brampton's my hometown. So it was a chance to perform in my home theater, and it was great. And I started doing more community engagement, which is actually kind of good that I started doing that before I did communications, because it made me quite good at communications. Really, you just have to be able to talk to people.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't like talking to people. So if you can stand in a square and generally, shoot the shit with someone, you're good at communications and engagement. So I started engaging for the City of Brampton. So like they might get me to stand out in the square during like World Cup or something. And I would like represent the theater school, or we had an educational outreach arm of the city, and we would send actors to schools to like teach improv or whatever. And the city kind of noticed I was pretty good at talking to people. So then they had me just be the announcer at a couple of events.
Just kind of emceeing the event.
Yeah. So they put on farmers market every Saturday in the summertime in Brampton, and they have a main stage underneath the big screen TV that a couple of years they fought to get put there right on the corner.
Is it kind of like Mississauga's like Celebration Square type thing?
Mississauga had a Jurassic Park. Brampton had one too.
Here too. Yeah.
I think they're great. They're like little kind of, you don't have to then go into the city to see a basketball game, or you don't have to go and see like the big major
there were Jurassic
events.
Parks across the entire country.
I think that's kind of cool.
That was pretty whack. Like there was one in Burlington down the street here.
Though I'm a little peeved that Brampton didn't ask me to come be the MC.
Ooh, that would have been good.
I don't know. Come on now. I don't know.
Who was MC?
Honestly, I don't even know if they did have one. They might not have.
Well, if they did, screw that person.
I know. Right? I know.
But see, that's another avenue too, that there's so many like careers and jobs and gigs in places that you would never expect. You just have to be open to those opportunities when they come up. Like as an actor, it's not just about like, you can't just limit yourself to one thing. Like you can't just be like, I'm a film actor. It's like, that doesn't work anymore.
You're right.
This is 2019.
and the other thing too with that is I always caution like young actors. It's tempting, but really try and avoid defining yourself too early, too strongly early on in your career. Meaning, I've always felt the artist that I want to be is someone who melts into the character, who you actually, even though you could know me, you might by the end of the performance kind of forget that it's me. So I believe if you want to be that kind of artist, you need to really expand yourself and try a bunch of different avenues, which is why, when I was leaving my university program, I really wanted to do more music theater, because my university program had hardly any singing or dancing in it. And I knew that's where a lot of the performance that I wanted to do, that's where it was going to be. So then it was my job to go and do a big, colorful musical. But then after that, you don't just want to do that. So then you want to do something a little bit more serious. And another thing that I think a lot of actors should try is playing characters that are wildly different from them. So I've played homosexual characters just as much as I've played heterosexual characters. I guess I've never really played
addicted parents.
I've definitely played more unsavory characters, and then really super campy characters. Yeah. I also think it's important for actors in the right setting with the right people and the right support, maybe someone like an intimacy coach, You got to explore playing a role that's kind of sexual or something that's kind of going to scare you.
Yeah.
So maybe that doesn't scare every artist, and some artists can just do it naturally. The important thing about the JP, at least at my program, was that it was supposed to be targeting your biggest fear or something that you're not the best at as an actor. And I definitely, as a performance artist, wasn't super comfortable in university or leaving university to play a character like that. So the chance when I played Riff Raff in Rocky Horror Music or the Rocky Horror Picture Show, that was the first time I ever played a character who's like supposed to like writhe on stage. And it's like awkward, but it's also important to kind of learn what that's like. And I definitely believe it's better for you in the long run to try and spread yourself into a lot of different venues and a lot of different styles of performance.
Mm-hmm. Well,
yeah, that was really scary.
I agree. Not necessarily like with acting, because I'm not much of an actor, but in filmmaking, when I was in my second year at Sheridan, one of the projects we had to do was like our first major short film of the year. There were 6 that were made. And the writing class would submit the scripts. The faculty would pick like 6 of them. And the writer was not allowed to be involved with the production. So like it would be up to a different director. You couldn't direct your own script. That was the whole thing, was like learn how to separate yourself from.
That's cool.
So the people who wanted to direct had to basically like bid on a script, and only 6 people were going to get to direct. I was lucky enough to get picked because my number one script, I was the only person who picked this particular script written by do you know Margaret McDougall? She works at Arc
Name
Media.
Sounds very familiar.
She's one of
I would
my
know
best
her.
friends. Yeah. So she wrote it, and the scene involved like a sexual assault. Like it was not girl with the dragon tattoo rape scene-esque, but it was a guy like grabs a woman and throws her against the wall and locks her up, and it implies that he sexually assaults her. And I was the only person who picked her script as my number one, so I got it. Where it came down to like basically like coin tosses for some of the other ones. A whole bunch of people put it as their second or third, but I was like, that freaks me out. And it's like, I'm in film school. The stakes are 0.
Yeah.
Like I could make this film and it could be absolutely atrocious. I will have learned something, and I could also make sure that nobody ever sees it again.
Yeah.
So I got to do it, and it was super awkward, and it was very funny because the 2 actors that I ended up casting were primarily comedy actors.
Weird. So that must have been tricky.
So yeah, well, but they both approached this like knowing that this was a drama, and and I think they were doing the exact same thing, because they like the actress. Oh my God, her name is escaping me right now. Jessie, the actress Jessie. She does lots of voiceover work, lots of like cartoony, commercial, very upbeat, bubbly, and she's a super strong personality. And this character is supposed to be so defeated because the film flips back and forth between pre-sexual assault and post-sexual assault. Basically, in the film, she's trying to tell her friend that her friend's husband raped her. And so she's a very like, commanding personality. And in this, she's supposed to be so defeated. And then the actor, Nathan, is so goddamn funny. Like he does tons of background stuff in Toronto. His Instagram kills me. Like he's just a funny dude. But I think both of them were doing exactly what you're saying, in that they wanted to try something totally outside their comfort zone. And I'm sitting here directing like one of my first ever short films, and it involves a sexual assault. But that was the whole thing, was like, if I can pull this off, even if it's bad, if I can get through doing this, then I will have learned something. And I feel like I think that's part of what opened me up later on to taking on just stuff I wasn't comfortable with. Like, I mean, the fact that I work for Sportsnet and do work for them when I never ever watched sports, like it was just it opened me up to saying like yes to opportunities I didn't necessarily think I would be up for otherwise.
It's hard to think of it when you're there because you're a kid, or you're not a kid, but like you're in university or college for the first time. it's hard to remember that the whole point of college or university is it's a laboratory. You're supposed to, it's an experiment. You're supposed to feel like you can make mistakes and totally fall flat on your face. And it's okay that you did that. And I think maybe sometimes students forget that. And then they
become so passionate about their projects when in reality, majority of the stuff you're going to do when you're in film school is at best going to be like, okay. Because you're there to learn how to do it.
You're there to learn. It's like I was doing a shoot last year I shot with Sheridan. It was a student film. It was they have like a 1-year program, or it's like
ATVF?
ATVF. I think it was them. And so I was shooting their kind of culmination, one of their culmination scripts. And it was like a 10-minute short about zombies. And it was really fun. And it was the director, Connor. He was great. He knew what he wanted to get. It was great people on set. But it's just, there's way too many things for a young filmmaker to catch everything. And the whole point is, you're supposed to miss a couple of things, and I'm still happy, with the final result, but you're totally right. Like, it's impossible to catch everything. And that's why you just keep coming at it. You keep trying.
Yeah. So what's you're now an apprentice for ACTRA.
It's just happened today. I got my number.
Right, shit.
I got my number. Yeah. So I've shot a couple of union spots.
Yeah.
But I just that was last year, and I just decided to pay for the work permit, and I decided to let the apprentice opportunity go because I was still shooting a television show called Cutie Pugs.
Yeah, the dog.
Yeah,
dog
there's puppies, and there's a little actress named Riley Ann Jarvis. She's great, and she plays this little 5-year-old hero named Dee Dee, and I play her dad. And they go on adventures, and it's an educational show. It's like teaches you stuff like night and day, and dark and light, and all that. So I decided not to pursue union because there was the possibility that maybe that show might get a second season. And I was very happy with the work that we had created. And, it was also my very first TV family, which was kind of cool. Like, my wife is played by Ginny Wong, and she's a really talented actress. She used to be on a Disney cruise line. I think she was Pocahontas. And if you get a chance to see her, you'll be like, oh yeah, because she looks like a Disney character.
I watched a trailer or something at some point for this show. Yeah.
So I decided, so I shot a couple of union spots last year. But I didn't take my apprentice. But I've been being sent out for some union stuff, and I just felt it was time to take the plunge. I'm scared of it, but as we just finished talking about, sometimes you got to do stuff that makes you scared. So so today I got my AM number, whatever it is, and now begins the scary process of only ever auditioning for union things as an apprentice. And then they also, now I have access to their online learning modules. Our industry is changing all the time. I mentioned it before, but I'll say it again. When I was in university, there was no such thing as an intimacy coach. When we directed the actress who played Cassandra in the Trojan Women, when she had to do something to me in my front, that was more of a stage combat kind of direction rather than an intimacy coach. Now, I think everybody walked away from that show feeling good about it. But ultimately now there's a new position, a new job in the theater. And then anytime that happens on set or on...
And what's the job? I mean, like, I know what it is, but what's the job of an intimacy coach?
Oh, yeah. So basically it's I really believe it stemmed from stage combat. And so I'm not an authority on stage combat, but like I'm taking it for us. Like we I think had the right mindset and the right safety mindset about performance, that it seems natural that we were I believe stage combat artists probably suggested this first. But basically, whenever you're doing a fight on camera or on live performance, there has to be a moment in rehearsal when we all stand around and say, what do we physically actually do? Like, how do we make it look like this punch is doing this? So now let's imagine it's not just a punch, but it's also a punch and a grab of a part of your body that we wouldn't really want you to grab. How do we do that? So a lot of times when I was a young stage combat artist, those were the kinds of things that I would go into a company and consult on. It was so frequent that I would be consulting on like a fringe show
Mm-hmm.
that there's like a rape scene.
Yeah.
So how do we do this? And then I would explain how we use, our bodies to hide certain things, how we use furniture to hide things. And then in a very safe space, whatever that means. So you as a company would have to create that safe space. You all go through it and figure it out.
And so is that so basically to make sure
Intimacy.
that everybody is like comfortable, they know what's happening. It's so that all parties involved are aware of, what actually has to go into.
I'll give you the example.
Yeah.
So I was doing a show called Spoon, written by Spencer Charles Smith, who's now in London, England. He's a professor, great theater mind. It's directed by Jonathan Sienin. I think I got his name right. In this play, Spencer and I played two husbands. Mm-hmm. And I was supposed to be the very masculine kind of dominant man, whereas he was the more feminine man. And as the play transitioned, we swapped roles.
Okay.
And it was very graphic and it was very avant-garde and there was a lot of nudity and there was a lot of stuff that it was scary for me as a performer. And the director, he knew that it was very scary for me. And like as a heterosexual male being put into those positions, it was a new experience for me. I'd never done anything like that. And what we did was we made it a closed, safe set the first time we did it. So we all had like comfortable clothing on and we were in our rehearsal space and we were like, okay, well, the script says Spencer does this to Andy. So how can we do this that everybody's comfortable and everybody's feeling good? Mm-hmm. It was a closed set and I think that was a really appropriate way of doing it. Now, here's the opposite example. I was doing a different play and it was a community theater show. So that should give your viewers and listeners a bit of context as to the types of people who put on community theater. Mm-hmm. There was a kiss in the play, a big kind of triumphant. I played one of the leads. There was a girl who was playing the other, the female lead. There's this big culminating kiss and then a great music number.
Yeah.
And we had not rehearsed the kiss in rehearsal. And I guess they were maybe kind of feeling like, I don't know.
Spur of the moment.
Yeah. So then what ended up happening one day, a person, the stage manager, kind of just said, okay, you two come with me into an office. And we went into an office and we practiced the kiss. And the reason why that wasn't great for me was because I didn't really know what we were going to do. So all of a sudden we were in rehearsal and then now we were swept out of rehearsal. And it was just me and the actress and the stage manager, and we did it. And I remember feeling like, I would have liked to have known that was happening tonight at rehearsal. Even just like a quick email to just let me know this is what's going to happen. This is how we're going to do it.
But again, could that just be that this is like community theater and these people don't think of that shit?
You got it. Yeah. Exactly.
It's not like it's
totally
malicious or wrong necessarily.
No. And
whatever.
And honestly, no hard feelings about it. Cause I just was like, But there's your example of like, not the right people are thinking about this ahead of time.
Yeah.
So now we have intimacy coaches. So at Stratford, if they're doing a performance of, I don't know, let's say they're just doing like, Romeo and Juliet or something. And there's a particular scene where they want, the Lark and Nightingale scene in Romeo and Juliet. It's after the first night they've ever stayed together. Romeo wakes up and says, I gotta go. Sun's coming up. And she's saying, no, you can stay. It's not the sun, it's the nightingale. It's a great little scene. Sometimes directors choose to be a bit more graphic with what they show in that scene because, as you can imagine, it's two lovers who have never been with each other for the first time.
They just banged
and
it out.
They just did. So, what are they going to be?
Yeah.
That would be an instance where you would want to have someone who they themselves have been a physical performer and can make everyone feel comfortable. Because, the other thing too is all artists are like, we're all kind of people pleasers and that I want you to like me so that I get another gig, or I want everyone to think I'm easy to work with. So even though this makes me uncomfortable, I'm not going to put my hand up.
Well, I mean, it's almost, I don't want to compare it too heavily to this, but it's almost like the whole Me Too movement in Hollywood, how basically like, it's just for a long time, basically sexual harassment was like tolerated. So it's like now again, not comparing necessarily
I
what
understand what you
actors
mean,
are
though.
doing like on stage, but it's like the just like this is how it is, deal with it kind of situation. And now we're opening up a bit more to like ensuring that people are not put into uncomfortable situations across the board, like not just with Harvey Weinstein and
So,
his office somewhere.
One of the first lessons I learned at Rape Your Wit, first, I just as a student, Dan Levinson was demonstrating emotion to the class. Like he was working with a partner. He was talking to the class, and then someone had another question. So he then went to go demonstrate with the person who asked the question. And I had never seen anyone in my life do this, but he went right up to her and said, "Is it all right if I put my hands on you?" And she said yes. And she looked him in the eyes and said yes. And I remember there was a bit of like laughter in the room because it was like a little uncomfortable. And it was like, do we really need to say that? Yes, we do. And if we had people like that monitoring film sets, we'd have, it wouldn't be as bad as it gotten. But
that's very cool. No,
yeah.
like, I mean, I can understand why initially it might be kind of that uncomfortable laughter but it's a totally like valid question.
Thing, yeah.
Like because you don't want to make people uncomfortable. We're here to make art or to put together a performance or a piece that we want to present to people. And if people are being put into positions or situations they're not comfortable with, not that they're like what you were talking about with the one role you did, you were uncomfortable with it when you were playing the husband, but that's you pushing your own sort of limits as an actor.
I wanted to be in that position.
Like you wanted that, but the other sort of like the unwanted uncomfort or discomfort, limiting that is like a good thing across the board, and not just fucking acting everywhere.
You know what it is too? It's like, I think it's transparency. Yeah. And it's like, I was mentioning that other commercial I worked on where it seemed like not everybody was really all working together. I'm not a huge fan when directors will like take an actor and like whisper something in their ear and then be like, "Okay, everyone, let's redo it again." And like, this actor is now going to do something like a surprise. I understand.
Okay, surprise.
I understand why some directors do that, because, okay, here's the example when it works. It's like when Spielberg doesn't let his actors walk on set. Willy Wonka. Yeah. None of the actors except Gene Wilder were allowed to see the set. And that first take is really what we get to see. That I totally understand. Because we as performers, we can know, that's the point. Yeah. But I don't like it when, like, let's say if we were on set together, like if you were to give Sapphire a note that's supposed to challenge me, I understand why you might do that. But I think it's actually better in the long run if all of us agree we're all artists, we're all on the same team, so let's all talk about everything that's happening, which is now back to why I like the intimacy coach, because it's like, yes, let's stand up and let's talk about why this makes us uncomfortable. Yeah. And let's all feel like we can voice our opinions in a safe space. This is the time to say, let's get uncomfortable. But yeah.
I thought when you said like when the director will pull an actor aside, I thought it was like, because I mean, that's something I try to do, not to like give them a note to change their performance necessarily without letting other people know. But I know a lot of actors are self-conscious. Like
totally.
We
all are.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
All of
us.
But
you guys are all on camera and shit. Like, so what I try to do when I'm working with actors is if I want them to modify their performance or try something, again, not to the detriment of the other characters or the other actors necessarily, but I don't like to publicly call out and tell somebody to change their performance in front of everybody. Like, because I know it's just little things, sure, but like if there's something like kind of fundamental that I feel like they're not doing what I want them to do, I would rather get them aside and talk to them for a minute one-on-one and be like, okay, here, why don't you try this? Because rather than like sitting behind my monitor and being like, you're fucking this up.
Yeah. And so you're totally right. Cause I've been on sets where like that Kit Kat set, that director was screaming some stuff. And it was like, it's kind of hard to be really excited
do you want me
about
to sell this this totally inhuman action.
And I've been on other sets where like if you're doing something wrong, that's so appreciated when the director comes over and just has a nice little talk between the two of you. I just don't know if it's the best way to get a solid performance out of everybody if not everybody knows what's happening. And so
And that I
again,
agree with.
you know what I mean? So it'd be like, yeah, like I think we all probably in our career have had moments where we're like, I need to try something to get something out of this actor. I'm going to try this. I still think it's at the end of the day, it's better to just be super transparent. And I think that's what the intimacy coach is doing. And that's definitely what Stage Combat does. We talk about safety, story, style. Safety is tantamount. Safety takes precedent over story.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I would much prefer the story to be garbage and everybody be safe and, get home.
Well, you know what? It's funny because I very often say that, I mean, what we do is important and we like to do it properly and we like to, make art and we like to think that it's an important part, but we're not saving lives.
No.
But what you are describing is making sure that we save everybody's lives by the end of the day, like that we actually all go home safe and survive a shoot, because a lot can go wrong in a shoot and it can be dangerous. Like people can get electrocuted by lights. People like there's like safety needs to be number one.
Knock on wood,
constantly.
I've never had any issues when I've stunt coordinated.
Well, we did set fire to that factory when we shot Optic.
I wasn't in charge of that, my man, and I wasn't even on set.
That's
for
true.
that.
You were not there. That was Branch.
Yeah, but I was just doing fighting with that, and that was kids, and all those kids walked away unscathed.
That's true. They did.
But yeah, knock on wood. You hope not to get that stuff, but I do think safety kind of is the primary thing we need to do, and you have to also, if you're an actor or an artist listening and someone is talking about safety on set, really listen to them, because I've definitely had experiences where when I was working for U of T, I was doing my master's, I was working on a show, another one of those performances where it's like no one's ever seen this play, but we want to do it anyway. And we were doing a hanging scene with a noose and a neck. And
that's a whole recipe for disaster right there.
And I totally had to call stop in the middle of a go. It wasn't a live performance where there was like audience, but it was definitely a rehearsal. And I saw something and I called stop and I stood up and I totally was the big stink in the room. And I pissed off a lot of people. But I was like, guys, you cannot do it this way. You cannot, because of this. And I was laughed at. I was laughed at by the actors, even the guy who I was trying to protect. He was kind of like, Andy, relax. I'm okay. I'm like, I'm an adult. A week later, it was that instance. It was 2012. A guy died in Brazil doing the Passion play. He played Judas, and he went on stage and he hung himself. Like he was hung in front of an audience, and nobody saved him because they thought he was acting. The mechanical rig that they had tried to hook him onto had failed, which is why I never trust rigs when I'm doing live performance. It's like, I've had people like, they'll go out and buy those little knives with like the retractable. Yeah. And I was like, do you really believe that this mechanism will save your life every day? Yeah. Because I'd rather trust like a smart, intelligent person. But anyways, so the culmination of that story was a week after I called the kind of stop to rehearsal. We changed the technique. Yeah. Everybody laughed at me. That guy died in Brazil. The actor came up to me a week later saying, thank you for that, because I didn't realize how serious this is. And I was like, the last thing you want to do is be on stage surrounded by people who think the show must go on. Yeah. That's also BS. The show must never go on.
Yeah. If you can stop the show. People's lives and safety is far more important than the cost of admission for your play. Yeah. Like 100%. We talked about Evil Dead. We talked about stage combat, commercials. We kind of hit all the marks.
Anything else?
So
voiceover?
Oh yeah, shit. We'll do a little bit on voiceover.
I do a little bit of voiceover, Mike. Yeah. Mike, I do a little bit of voiceover. And I wish I could do more of it. It's a really lucrative business, and it's very tight knit.
That's what my buddy Scott does. Yeah. Like he quit acting to focus purely on voice acting.
Didn't you say, Scott, he got that kid Bakugan or something?
Yes, the animated show, and he's on this other Nickelodeon show. But what Scott, actually, this is what I wanted to get into. What Scott and I talked about is auditioning and the what he called it his 95% failure rate.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Like that's what we described it as, because he's like auditioning constantly and booking
that's
very
the job.
Little. Like
that's the job.
And I mean, he does all voice work. So a lot of his auditions are just at home. Like he's got a booth that he built in his house. Nice. So he can do a lot of it from home. But like if you're not doing voice work, you don't get that luxury.
Now you have to go in.
You have to go in. Like,
well,
there's lots of self-tapes and stuff now too, but
I find that indie films, they don't have enough money to run a full casting.
Yeah.
Or they just don't want to.
Or indie films just don't have enough money to do anything.
You got it. So they might do a self-tape.
Yeah.
And self-tapes are kind of like you love and hate them. I love a self-tape because you get to do it at home.
Yeah.
You're in charge. And you actually have to think about things that you don't normally think about as an actor. So like things like lighting, editing.
All those little things will
totally
put you up above the other people who did it just on their cell phone with their shitty microphone.
Yeah. And if you can have like a little at-home rig or something, that's good. But yeah, I would say the number one thing about being an actor is auditioning, and your friend is 100% right. It's like a 95% failure rate. I used to say I used to tell when I did a lot of teaching, I would always tell young actors, you have to change your philosophy as to how you consider a successful audition. Meaning, if you make a connection with like a director, that's a successful audition. If you have a monologue that you've never been able to make someone laugh and you go do it, even at a cattle call for like a Mervish production, and you make one person laugh, that's a successful audition. If you can walk away and feel like you felt you did a good job, that's a successful audition. If you walk away thinking it's only successful if you book it, you're going to be a failure. Because I mean, I've gone to 6 auditions this week alone, and I probably won't hear back of them. Yeah. Yeah.
And those are like auditions you went to.
Yeah. Went to put up a take. And that's, remember I said, this industry is like an industry of takes, and you need to be a performer, meaning you need to be able to take a script at 7 p.m. the night that, like, when you get it, cancel everything because you probably have stuff going on that night, cancel your next day, learn the script, go in with the right costume, the right everything, right hair, right everything, then go and do it. And then in that moment, you have an opportunity to put up 2 good takes. And if you get those 2 good takes, then you might get a chance to go meet the director and do it again.
Is that difficult to get through daily? Like,
I mean, yeah, sure. It's difficult because I think when you're in university, I don't know, did you have like a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan?
Yeah.
Sure, right? And then what you end up not doing it. Yeah.
Threw that out.
Yeah. So I wrongly believed, based on university, that most actors who are successful, they might do maybe 3 shows a year, a smattering of commercials here and there, and maybe work on a movie. That's not the case. The case is you might do just auditions all year and get nothing. And that could be your year. The year that you do 3 months at factory might be the also year that you shoot nothing. And, you have a side business, So sometimes it's a grind. The way I look at it, though, is it's like a hunt. And I kind of like it in that way. So you're right. It is a bit of a grind when you don't hear back. It's a grind. It's hard to keep going into the same rooms with the same people and smile and, you do your whole earnest, honest performance. But the way I look at it is, it's a hunt. So my agency sends me targets. I prepare for those targets, the best I could. You have to think about everything, like your costume, your hair, your shoes. You don't have to ever bring in real costume items. So what I mean by that is, like, if you're going out for an audition and it says your character is dressed like a policeman, I wouldn't recommend renting a policeman's uniform. Some people do. I don't think you need to. I think it's your job as a creative artist to kind of take your wardrobe and make it
police
work.
It up a little bit.
Yeah. And just give them something. And then you go in and you get a minute or 5 minutes to make your case. And if you're good at making your case and you're polite and you seem like a person that's not crazy and you'll be dependable, clients love actors who are not risky to them. So it's like, dependable on time. Then you leave the city and you hope you got your kill. So that's how I kind of deal with it. Sometimes there's a lot of like sitting, waiting in your car. Sometimes like you have to kill some time
because you got there early.
Yeah. So you feel like a detective, just like waiting, just like looking at the stuff. It's weird, but Definitely better than the times I've spent in an office. I've had some jobs like that. Working
9 to 5.
Yeah, Hudson's Bay Legal Department. Rough.
Fun.
Not fun. Not fun. But so I'm happy I'm getting a chance to do this. But it can be a grind when that's all you do. If all you do is like,
yeah,
it can be hard. So a lot of us actors have other stuff, you know. I sing, and I have a guitar, and I like writing. I paint. I'm not a very good painter, but I try.
Okay, I'm not a good writer.
Well, there you go. So it's fun. Yeah, you gotta kind of expand yourself. I definitely love what I get to do, though, and I recommend people trying it. I think a lot of actors who are maybe in university right now, or at least a lot of them, will go on a similar path that many of my peers did, which was university is a trip. It's lovely. You get to have your first experiences. But then you get into the world of like the industry. And I think a lot of people, their expectations of what the industry is going to be is not what it actually is. And many of them then think, well, why do I want to put up with this hunt or this grind? I'm going to instead do something else.
That's my biggest thing I have told students. Like, I've talked to a couple high school classes, like media classes, is the biggest thing I tell people is to like temper their expectations.
Yeah.
Like you have an expectation of what your career might be or what the business is like. Throw that out and just take everything as like you have goals and you should shoot for them, but don't be afraid to deviate because you never know what kind of opportunity that might lead you. And like the people set their expectations way too high for everything, I think. And
it's good too for actors and maybe I guess just artists in general. Expand the kinds of work you do.
Yeah.
Because it's like I had never done a pantomime until I did one. And then I realized, this is why people really work hard to get into Ross Petty's pantomime, because it's a blast. And if you get one of those spots, boy, what a fun gig that would be. And then, you do like a really colorful, bright musical. And you're like, I totally get why people kill themselves to get into one of these shows. Because it's fun, and it's a great way to...
kids' TV shows, too.
Hey,
right?
You know what? Kids' TV shows. I broke the 2 cardinal rules of acting in my first television show. Don't work with animals and don't work with kids.
Yeah.
The show's all about animals and kids. And it's great. I love it. I love it. It's really fun.
Well, on that note, I think we've been over 2 hours now. So,
hey, that was good.
Yeah, that was good.
Not bad.
I appreciate you coming out, man.
Mike, thanks for having me.
We should talk further about some other projects we want to do before you go... Well,
full.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, dude. I'm going to cut this now.
Cool.
Thank you for watching this week's episode of the J-Cut Podcast with Andy Ingram. We've got more Where That Came From available now and coming weekly. So please give the channel a subscribe, hit that bell notification, or check us out on your favorite audio podcast platform. Next week's episode is really exciting. It features someone I've worked with a ton over the past couple of years, on-air host for Sportsnet in Toronto, Caroline Schved.
The person who I was growing up, because it was just someone who was too much to a fault, always in here. But now I'm trying to find that balance, but extreme introvert growing up.